This movie, released in 2021, is about the polyamorous relationship between three people in the beautiful south of France. The film starts with Fred strumming the guitar, while Lane sings beautifully. Bertie says she hates the song, but Fred continues to play. However, Bertie hesitates because the summer heat is not vibing with her mood to sing. She spends her time soaking in the bathtub and not doing anything. Meanwhile, someone is at the door ringing the bell, and she keeps calling Fred to answer it. She calls many times, but Fred isn't answering, so she gets frustrated and has to get up to answer the door. She gets out of the shower, grabs 2 cups of refreshment, and brings them to the worker who is doing their pool. Bertie doesn't understand French, so she just lets the man talk. She uses the little knowledge she has of French and hand signals. They seem to live peacefully in a small house, away from the bustling city. In town, Fred is in a car picking up a woman from the train station. The woman is Lane, one of their romantic partners, but Lane is very worried that Bertie won't accept her or be happy to see her. Fred leaves the 2 women as he goes back to the heart of the city. Lane enters the house with worry as she looks at the beautiful provincial French property. As she walks through their grounds, she sees Lane doing her gardening. Lane greets her and welcomes her, serving wine in the middle of the summer heat, since she doesn't have anything else. It turns out Bertie is from New Orleans, and Lane comments on it. They talk about why there are small windows, and Bertie explains it's because they raise silkworms. Lane mentions that she's moving to New Orleans, and talks about her dating life. They reflect on what happened to their lives after they ended their relationships. Fred and Bertie are already married. Bertie makes a room for Lane to stay in their house. Lane admires the view and the beauty of their house. She's on her way to Spain. Since it's market day, Bertie invites Lane to come with her to the town center. They go to the market and immerse themselves in the different tastes and cultures, with Lane acting as the language guide. They enjoy sampling free tastes of cheese and other spices. They stroll along the charming cobbled road, immersed in the peaceful ambience of the countryside. Bertie curiously inquires about Fred's fame and the funding he received from Switzerland for his upcoming tour. However, Lane expresses her lack of interest in joining the tour. A friendly local passerby recognizes Bertie and warmly compliments their music, creating a sense of pride and recognition. Bertie proudly introduces Lane as a talented writer, emphasizing their individual creative endeavors. Lane, though a bit out of touch, reminisces about her last performance, which took place more than 8 months ago. Fred, occupied with other projects, has experienced a shift in dynamics as their gigs have multiplied. Now, he is recognized primarily as the musician, while Bertie is often perceived as just the wife handling vocals. Bertie shares this observation with Lane, acknowledging that it's something they frequently encounter. They ride their bicycles back to their quaint countryside house, where Bertie takes the opportunity to showcase the enchanting beauty of their surroundings. They pause at various points, plucking random fruits along the way, relishing the simple pleasures the countryside offers. The scene is captured in a breathtaking shot, showcasing their genuine joy and contentment amidst the lazy countryside setting. Upon their return, Fred awaits their arrival at home and drops a hint about someone coming to introduce Lane. This sparks a heated argument between the couple, with Lane feeling excluded from their discussion and their shared life. The sense of jealousy and awkwardness surrounding the new dynamics they have embraced becomes increasingly palpable for Lane. Seeking a moment to gather herself, Lane politely goes to take a refreshing shower. As she ascends the stairs, she inadvertently overhears Bertie and Fred engaged in a conversation. Bertie firmly asserts that she will not reconcile with Lane if that is Fred's underlying intention. Lane, now aware of their exchange, feels a mix of emotions swirling within her. Later on, Lane finds herself gracefully assisting Fred in the kitchen, a shared space where they engage in a semblance of harmony. As they prepare a meal together, they raise their glasses in a toast, sharing a brief moment of unity. During the ensuing dinner, their guests engage in lively conversations predominantly in French, enveloping the atmosphere with a vibrant energy. However, Bertie appears somewhat distant, lost in her own thoughts. Concerned, their friend Pierre inquires if everything is all right, and if Bertie is genuinely happy to see Lane again. Pierre recalls the absence of Lane at Bertie and Fred's wedding, prompting Bertie to explain that Lane was unable to attend the special occasion. Following the delightful dinner, filled with engaging conversations, delicious food, and flowing wine, the evening progresses harmoniously. Laughter and camaraderie fill the air as they raise their glasses in toasts, cherishing the warmth of good company. As the night draws to an end, Lane and Bertie bid their fellow guests goodnight with an awkward embrace, their gestures giving away a sense of tension. Lane retreats to her room, seeking solace in solitude, while Bertie settles in for the night. Fred takes the opportunity to approach Lane, inquiring if she happens to have any pills that could assist Bertie in achieving a restful sleep. Bertie no longer confides in him, and he expresses frustration regarding the changes that have transpired since their departure from New Orleans. Bertie's discontent with the music industry has taken a toll on her, rendering her a shadow of her former self in recent months. Sensing a rift in their relationship, Lane questions why Bertie didn't reach out when Lane's mother passed away. However, Bertie candidly reveals that she purposefully refrained from making the call, opting to handle the grief on her own terms. The discussion veers toward the state of Bertie and Lane's relationship, prompting Fred to acknowledge that their bond is no longer his domain. Lane, worried by the weight of unresolved emotions, retreats to her bed with a somber expression, grappling with the complexities of their shared history. In the morning, as the day dawns, a team of maintenance workers arrives at their picturesque house, tending to various tasks around the property and their farm. Lane finds pleasure in the simple joy of foraging for wild fruits, relishing the tranquility of the countryside. Engrossed in their respective routines, Lane observes Bertie casually wandering about, while Fred immerses himself in the creative process alongside his musical peers. Approaching Bertie, who is floating in the pool, Lane notices the water level is lower than usual, mentioning a leak. Lane joins Bertie for a swim and pushes her off the floater, inadvertently causing some book pages to get wet in the process. They bask in the sun's warmth, and Lane takes it upon herself to dry the well-loved copy of Jane Eyre, a cherished favorite of Bertie's that has been read a dozen times. Playfully, Lane remarks on Bertie's fondness for Prince Charming-type stories. However, the atmosphere grows more serious as Bertie confronts Lane about her true intentions in coming to France. Lane admits that she wanted to check on their fancy countryside lifestyle and ensure Bertie's well-being. The bitterness between them surfaces, with Bertie expressing her frustration over Lane's sudden disappearance for 2 years, during which they had no means of contacting each other. Doubting Lane's claim that she came solely to check up on her, Bertie recalls Lane's absence during her own wedding, and accuses her of being preoccupied with her own life business. Lane counters, revealing her attempts to reach out to Bertie when her mother passed away, but Bertie was consumed by the preparations for her wedding with Fred. Questioning Bertie's decision to marry Fred, Lane receives a curt response that it was simply the right time for them, and that Lane has no right to interfere in her marriage. Feeling insignificant, Lane points out that her presence or absence wouldn't have made a difference. The tension between them escalates, with Bertie venting her anger at Fred for summoning Lane, storming off and leaving Lane alone by the poolside. They gather for lunch, with Fred engaged in lively conversation with his parents, seamlessly switching between Spanish and French. Meanwhile, Bertie helps herself to a salad, and the silence between Lane and Bertie remains palpable. Lane awkwardly brings up wanting to see their wedding photos and videos, unintentionally aggravating Bertie, and intruding upon the sanctity of their relationship. Bertie reluctantly shares that they had 2 weddings, a civil ceremony and a church ceremony, attended by select friends. While Fred enthusiastically plans the day's activities, Lane declares that she isn't feeling well, and opts to spend the day in bed. Fred mentions Valerie's upcoming birthday party, a mutual friend and musician, suggesting that Bertie attend to reignite her creative spark and reconnect with her musical aspirations. Sensing the strain between Lane and Bertie, Lane advises Fred not to pressure Bertie further, her concern evident in her words. Lane then talks about her plan to train in massage therapy in Barcelona and become a massage therapist. She says something awkward, and the couple just looks at her. She goes back to her room and looks at photos of her and Bertie when they were together, feeling increasingly jealous and sad. She goes to Bertie's room, where Bertie is playing the piano. Bertie asks if she woke Lane up, and Lane gives her a bottle of pills. Bertie surmises that Fred asked Lane to bring them to her, but Bertie says it's not the pills she needs or wants. It is not the lack of sleep that is troubling her. Lane touches Bertie's shoulders, then caresses her skin, but Bertie hesitates and tells her to stop. Lane stops and leaves, leaving Bertie confused about her feelings. Meanwhile, Fred is drinking with older men and peers, discussing various topics. A woman goes over to them, and Fred's reaction to her seems different, like he is familiar with the woman. The woman leaves, and Fred goes up to her to talk and catch up. They engage in small talk, and the woman asks about Bertie. Fred says they're okay, hinting at a history between them. The French woman is named Marion. She was a neighbor of Bertie and Fred's, and also a writer. Fred and Marion had a brief flirtation, but it was clear at the time that their relationship was not meant to be. It also seems that Bertie has chosen to prioritize her personal life over her career. They decide to go to the birthday party after all. Lane comes along, much to Bertie's chagrin. Bertie brings wine, and the 3 of them go together. They walk happily in the road. Lane plays the saxophone. Bertie and Lane act as if nothing happened between them. They arrive at the party and join the family, enjoying their time with food, wine, and good conversations. Lane is seen to be very good at socializing with people, joking and having fun, something that Bertie is not very skilled at. Lane admits that she doesn't understand what people are talking about at times. Lane apologizes for her earlier actions, since she is already married. They establish clear boundaries between them. They discuss the girl from Israel, who is attractive to Lane. Then the conversation shifts to Lane's new career, but Lane seems to avoid the topic. Bertie notices a familiar look on Lane's face. A girl named Noah approaches them and mistakes Lane for the bartender. Lane pours her a whiskey, and Noah mentions that Bertie saved her at some point. Noah invites them to drive Valerie's new car, but it only has 2 seats. Bertie opts to stay behind and lets them go alone. Noah offers to drive, and they set off. It's already dark, and they find themselves at a campfire, listening to music and watching their friend play guitar. Bertie showcases her beautiful voice. Everyone is in awe of her natural talent. Fred plays jazz to accompany her voice and the guitar, played by a band member. Bertie's singing enchants the guests as they drink wine around the campfire. It's a beautiful setting that portrays the essence of a simple life. Noah and Lane return while Bertie is playing the chords of the song. Lane paces around, feeling uneasy and a bit guilty. She experiences bouts of jealousy. Noah calls her out and invites her to smoke weed. Noah suddenly asks Lane if she is a dog person or a cat person, but Lane responds that she is a snake person. Noah reveals that she's a dog person and mentions that dogs are vulnerable to snakes. They shift the conversation to Bertie, and Noah asks about the dynamic in their three-way relationship. Noah finds it hard to believe that having two partners can work without it being messy. She questions Lane about how she feels, sharing Bertie with Fred. Lane explains that she has to love the person that the person she loves loves. Noah further shares that she allows her girlfriend to be with men because she sees men as being obsolete. Meanwhile, Fred and his friend Pierre are engaged in an argument relating to the tour in Switzerland, brushing Lane off. On the other side, the other neighbors are laughing together with Bertie. Lane pulls Bertie away and suggests bringing Noah back to the house later that night. Bertie's reaction quickly turns sour, as she can't believe that Lane would ask that of her. Pierre approaches Bertie and compliments her singing. He expresses that he misses her voice because it hasn't sounded as good lately. He urges her to get back into singing and seems desperate for her to seriously focus on the band tour. Fred returns and dismisses Pierre. Bertie tells Fred that they should go home, but Lane expresses her intention to stay out. Fred says he might stay out a little longer, but Bertie doesn't want to. Back in the house, Fred mentions that Bertie acts differently when Lane is around and suggests that she wants to impress Lane. Bertie asks if Fred wants her to act that way more towards him. Bertie expresses her frustration towards Fred for bringing Lane without asking her first. Fred accuses Bertie of lying and insists that she actually enjoys having Lane with them. Bertie asserts that Fred has no right to tell her how she truly feels and questions if he wants Lane to move in and live with them. She asks what she would even do in that situation. Fred suggests that Lane could become a massage therapist. Meanwhile, Noah and Lane become intimate in another room, causing a lot of noise while the couple is still awake. Bertie also can't believe that Fred asked Lane to bring sleeping pills. Fred takes the sleeping pills because he knows he won't be able to sleep, and Bertie takes one as well, because Lane and Noah's noise is disturbing. During breakfast the next morning, Noah comes out improperly dressed. She compliments the house, and Fred offers her breakfast. Noah asks if the couple had fun the previous night, and compliments Bertie's singing. Bertie asks when Noah is going back to Israel. Noah appears to be a fun and adventurous person who enjoys hunting and tomboy activities. Lane joins them, and Bertie becomes visibly irritated. Lane asks if they slept well, and the couple responds affirmatively. The conversation takes on double meanings, which further irritates Bertie. Bertie suggests that she and Fred plan to go to the river, and invites Lane and Noah to join them. There is a growing animosity between Bertie and Lane. They proceed to go to the river, despite the tension. While Noah and Fred are playing by the river, Lane and Bertie have a conversation about Noah, discussing her age and their sexual encounter the previous night. When Noah removes her top, revealing her muscular and toned figure, Bertie admires it as well. Bertie asks Lane to put sunscreen on her back. Bertie questions whether Lane is truly serious about becoming a massage therapist, or if it's just an excuse to touch people all the time. She challenges Lane to demonstrate her skills, and mentions missing having sex with women. Lane asks if there are queer individuals around them, but Bertie is uncertain if they are interested. Noah approaches them, and they inquire about the water and discuss massages. Bertie comments that Lane's skills are basic, and Noah offers to massage Bertie. Bertie agrees, and Noah starts massaging her. Bertie immediately feels good about the massage, and asks if they teach it in the army. Noah proudly confirms this, and mentions using her skills to get favors from others, but denies using it for sex. Bertie asks further questions, including whether the violence in the army turns her off. Lane interrupts, telling Bertie to stop. It becomes apparent that Bertie dislikes Noah's job as a soldier due to the violence. Noah goes to Lane's side, and Lane apologizes for Bertie's behavior. Noah reassures them that it's okay. They spend the rest of the day sunbathing, playing in the water, and enjoying themselves. As they finish, they walk over the bridge and drive back home. Lane goes to where Noah is staying and discovers that, in addition to her other skills and talents, she is also a talented painter. While Noah paints, Lane acts silly and goofs around. They hang out for the rest of the afternoon. Lane returns home and Fred greets her, inviting her to dance slowly to the music. Fred asks Lane what she is doing, and Lane plays innocent. Fred persists, thinking that Lane came to France to figure things out with Bertie. Lane admits that she did. Fred asks for more details about what she's doing. Lane states that even if she were to beg on her knees, there is no chance. Lane also wonders if Fred is doing all this to get Bertie's attention, and questions if he truly knows his wife. Fred tells Lane to stop, but she says it's not easy for her. Fred advises her to take things seriously, and asks if Lane still loves Bertie. She stops and locks eyes with him, then asks him the same question. He explains that Bertie became different, in a positive way, when Lane came back, and admits that he does not have the same effect on her. Lane realizes that Fred is only doing all this for the tour, to keep Bertie in the right mood, and she is seemingly disgusted by it. The night turns rainy with thunderstorms brewing. Lane lights the candles in the room while Bertie watches her from outside. She eventually goes back to her room. Bertie returns to the town market for her routine food shopping. She has become familiar with the language and can handle it well, blending in like a local in the region. Later, Bertie cooks the fish she bought with Lane, and they eat silently while enjoying their customary wine. Lane asks if Bertie wants her to stay, but if not, Lane can leave immediately. Bertie expresses her frustration at how Lane left without any explanation, and then even returned without one, yet still has the audacity to tell Bertie what to do. Bertie asserts that her happiness is not dependent on Fred or Lane. She no longer cares about what Lane does, because she doesn't have the emotional space to care anymore. Lane counters by saying that Bertie is the one who doesn't allow anyone into her life. Bertie takes offense to Lane's statement, questioning her right to re-enter her life whenever she pleases. She accuses Lane of having a toxic habit of interfering in people's lives, and finding someone new when she gets bored. Lane claims that her intention is to be with Bertie, no matter how challenging it may be. However, Bertie finds it hard to believe her words, as her actions contradict them. She points out that if Lane truly wanted back into her life, she wouldn't have brought another girl and slept with her. It becomes apparent that Lane is gaslighting Bertie by shifting the blame, and failing to acknowledge her own flaws. Lane expected her actions to entice Bertie, but is surprised to discover that Bertie has changed. Lane abruptly leaves, with Bertie holding back her tears. Later, Lane is by the pool, smoking and drinking, still shaken by her earlier interaction with Bertie. She decides to go skinny dipping. After finishing, she goes back up to the room, and finds Bertie sulking in the moonlight. Lane enters the room in silence, seemingly unaffected, even with her. Lane manages to get Bertie to talk to her, but instead of speaking, Bertie kisses Lane's forehead and proceeds to shower her face with kisses. They hug, and Bertie asks for permission to remove. They become intimate, kissing each other all over. Bertie asks Lane to shut the door, and they continue their passionate encounter. Lane rummages through her luggage and retrieves a strap-on, and they engage in lovemaking. Afterward, they lie down together, but Bertie gets up and leaves Lane's room. In the morning, Lane wakes up and goes for a run under the unforgiving heat. Meanwhile, Bertie does some laundry and knocks on Lane's door, but Lane is not there. Lane stumbles upon a fortress-like building and decides to explore it. She reaches the top and enjoys the picturesque view while sitting alone, lost in thought. Meanwhile, Bertie is in the kitchen, staring into space and spending time crying, thinking that Lane has already left. The door opens, and she expects Lane to walk in. But it's actually Fred. Fred asks Bertie about Lane's whereabouts. Meanwhile, Lane continues running through the streets, appearing lost and unsure of the way back. She tries to find her way on her own in the almost isolated area, encountering a few people, including Noah, who is biking alone in the street. Noah questions why Lane is subjecting herself to such a situation, putting herself where she shouldn't be. Lane attributes it to obsession. As they prepare for their rehearsal, Lane returns, catching Bertie's attention. She goes out to check on Lane, who is exhausted and pale. Bertie offers her a drink to regain her strength, and wipes away her sweat. Lane expresses her fatigue, confessing that she wants all of Bertie. However, Bertie doubts Lane's sincerity. Bertie explains that she needs to go on the tour, but promises that they can work on settling their differences afterward. Bertie concludes that Lane will just leave her life again. She leaves Lane alone and joins the singing tour for rehearsal. Meanwhile, Lane packs her bags, angry and upset. She leaves the house, embodying the spirit of a true American backpacker, and arranges for a ride to take her away. Noah accompanies her in the car, and they leave the quaint countryside house. On the other hand, Bertie immerses herself in the game, finding love in singing again. She passionately performs during the rehearsal, with the rest of the group enjoying the session. Lane's face is filled with sourness as she departs.